At least shipping's free. Thanks, Apple. Alright, so I just picked up the new iPad Pro, and I'm going to show you guys what you can do with it as a student. And here it is, the new 2018 iPad Pro. If you've watched or read reviews, you probably already know that this device is an absolute powerhouse. It's also the thinnest iPad ever made, although it doesn't really feel that way because of its flat edges compared to the rounded edges of the older models. It's a beautiful device, aside from the small camera bump in the back. I mean, come on, Apple. At least it doesn't cause the iPad to rock on a flat surface. But I'm not really here to talk about its looks or specs. I'm here to help you figure out if you, as a student, should buy it, and things you should consider before doing so. Whether you're in middle school, high school, college, grad school, med school, whatever school, this iPad is more powerful than 92% of laptops according to Apple. But with great power comes a great price tag. I ended up buying the 256GB 11-inch model, keyboard, and Apple Pencil, along with Apple Care, and in total it cost me about $14.50. I ended up buying a USB-C to SD card reader too, so I spent nearly $1,500 on all of this. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying it to warn you. If you're a student or in education, there is a discount, but you have to let the Apple Store employee know that you're in school, and some may even ask for an ID. But if you buy it online, just make sure you go into Apple's education portal. It saved me about $60, and if that sounds ridiculous to you, that's because it is ridiculous.
You said the secret word!
Because my channel is pretty heavily focused on the programming aspect of computer science, let's see if the iPad makes sense for this purpose. If you're learning Swift and hoping or planning on developing your own apps, you're completely out of luck if you use an iPad. There's no iOS version of Xcode that allows you to do any sort of advanced programming. I don't doubt that the iPad can handle it, but because iOS doesn't have a real file system in Xcode, you don't even have the option to try. Unless you're learning Swift from the Playgrounds app, which is meant for little kids, you're not really going to benefit from having an iPad Pro, or even a regular iPad for that matter. Stick to a MacBook or an iMac. If you're working in the Snap programming language, the iPad Pro will kinda work. You can actually run Snap apps and can edit your blocks once you've created them by long pressing them with your finger or Apple Pencil. But because there's no real file system in iOS, you can't export and import blocks from past projects into new ones. I don't think it's a big deal, you're just going to have to make every custom block in a project from scratch. And speaking of scratch, version 3.0 will be coming out in January, and it also works on the iPad Pro. The Scratch developers have the same simulated right click, but still, I wouldn't suggest getting this iPad just to run Snap or Scratch. If you use online development environments like CodePen, Replit, or Cloud9, your experience will be hit or miss. Don't expect to have the same flexibility as you would with a full laptop, and expect a lot of bugs to crop up. If you're a web developer, you're just going to go insane pretty quickly. If you're just starting out in computer science and programming using sites like Free Code Camp or Codecademy, again you're going to want to steer clear. Some challenges worked, but others completely froze up. Codecademy even warns you that the experience will be better on a regular desktop with a mouse and keyboard. I think that the iPad can be a great learning tool for learning how to program, but only for younger kids. There are dozens of apps that teach the little ones the principles of coding and computer science in a manner that is engaging and fun. I'd even go as far as to say that I think the iPad is better for teaching younger students than an actual computer. A lot of the complexities of operating systems and file systems is abstracted away when you're using an iPad, so this makes it much easier for kids and older people to pick up and go, but it takes away from the flexibility that just slightly more advanced users require. If I had to give the iPad Pro a score for coding, I'd probably give it a 5 out of 5 for younger kids and a 0 out of 5 for anyone over the age of 12. You can make it work as an absolute beginner, but there's just so many limitations because of iOS 12 that can't be overcome. Keep in mind, however, that you can get just as much use out of this $950 iPad Pro as you could out of a $300 9.7-inch iPad. More on that later. Even though I have a million notebooks laying around my apartment, I just hate carrying around multiple notebooks for different subjects and sometimes even running out of paper. The iPad allows me to take all of my notes and all of my textbooks anywhere I go. If you're planning on taking notes, which you should be because you're a student, you're going to need to buy the keyboard and Apple Pencil. Without these, you're going to be forced to use the on-screen keyboard, which is just a recipe for disaster. The keyboard takes up about half the screen, and if you're planning on buying the iPad Pro without these accessories just to save money, do yourself a favor and just buy like 1,000 notebooks. I don't get why Apple just doesn't package them in.
Needs money!
For typing notes, I recommend using Google Docs, Microsoft Word, or Apple Pages. Even the Notes app is pretty decent, but personally I stick to Google Docs because of its integration with Google Drive and the ease in which I'm able to work on a document on all my devices. I plan on making future videos comparing and contrasting the different note-taking apps if this video does well, so if you like it, hit the subscribe button to get notified when I post them. Because the iPad Pro allows you to use the Apple Pencil, you have the ability to write your notes as if you were writing on paper. Studies show that students that handwrite their notes understand concepts better and retain more information than students that type out their notes. Personally, I try to handwrite my notes whenever possible using Microsoft OneNote. I know what you're thinking. Why would you use a Microsoft app for handwritten notes and a Google one for typed notes? I just find Microsoft's OneNote to be really good at keeping me organized. I'm able to create multiple notebooks with different sections and as many pages as I want in each. It syncs to my Office 365 account and I'm able to access my notes anywhere I have internet access. Google Drive just doesn't keep me as organized, and in order to recreate the notebook, sections, and pages from OneNote, I would have to create a whole system of folders and subfolders, and you just wouldn't be able to see the whole folder structure in Google Drive like you can in OneNote. It's not immediately obvious, but in order to scan in a piece of paper, you go to Notes, then you hit this little plus sign at the bottom, and you hit Scan Documents. And then you put the sheet of paper in view, and when you hit the Take Picture button, it scans it in as a PDF. You can then import this into your note-taking app. When I see a teacher giving out like a physical paper handout, I like to import it into my iPad as a PDF so I can write on it, highlight, draw, and I have all this unlimited space to take notes around this picture. Last year in my molecular biology class, I would take screenshots of the diagrams, throw it into my notes, and then I would write on the side whatever the professor was telling us about that diagram. Another thing that I find useful as a student is playing a video on one side and taking notes on the other side using split screen view. To open two apps at the same time in split screen view, you just have to swipe up and click and drag the app that you want to put on the right side or the left side and let it snap into place. At some point in your academic career, you're going to have to give a presentation to your class or to a group of people. The best options are Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint, or Apple's Keynote. All are free apps and give you enough flexibility to make great presentations. I personally prefer Google Slides because I've grown to be very comfortable using it on my computer and going back and forth between my iPad Pro and my MacBook Pro. If you have to deliver the presentation from your iPad, it's also easy to do wirelessly if the projector is hooked up to an Apple TV. If you need to hook up to an HDMI cable, you're going to need to go out and purchase this dongle. This is a USB-C to HDMI adapter, and it's going to cost you another $69 to get the Apple one.
Money!
If you're an artist, you're gonna love drawing on this thing. Now, I'm not much of an artist anymore, and I haven't played around with any of the drawing apps outside of Notes, so I don't have much to add about that. Although, I have let some of my former students and friends use my iPad Pro to draw some stuff, and they've created some beautiful artwork. If you want to make your own videos, you have a few options available. You can record directly with the iPad, or to get video files onto your iPad, you're gonna need this USB-C to SD card adapter. If you're using another iPad or iPhone to record, then you can just airdrop yourself the pictures or videos and then work with the files in iMovie. If you prefer the Adobe universe, you can edit videos using Adobe Premiere Rush, but it's going to run you about $10 a month to have a few more features and functionality than what iMovie has. So the final verdict, should you get an iPad Pro?
No. Of course not.
Oh man, what have I done?
I've made a huge mistake.
In good conscience, I cannot recommend buying the new iPad Pros at their current prices. Last year's 10.5-inch iPad Pro is still a worthy contender and can save you hundreds of dollars compared to the 2018 models. Unless you're running benchmarks or doing huge video exports side by side, you'll be hard-pressed to notice any significant difference in performance. But if you're a student, I still can't even recommend the 2017 iPad Pro.
What?
I think you have to take a serious look at the 2018 9.7-inch iPad. It's the first non-Pro iPad to have Apple Pencil support. It has Touch ID and will allow you to do pretty much everything I went over in this video. You can pick up a 128GB model with an Apple Pencil, keyboard, and AppleCare for like $500-600. That's like 1,000 Junior Bacon Cheeseburgers less than what I just spent. If you're ballin' and are going to buy it no matter what I say, you have to ask yourself a few questions now. First, which size iPad Pro should you get? This model is the 11-inch. The reason I chose the smaller one is because I already have the first 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and I never found myself needing all of the extra screen real estate that it provided. I just always felt like I would have been fine with the smaller model, so this time I opted for the 11-inch. It's lighter, meets all of my needs, and it's slightly cheaper, and I think the best one for me. Next, you have to determine the storage capacity that you're going to need, and that depends on what you plan on using your iPad Pro for. If you take a lot of pictures and video and plan on doing some video editing, you're going to need to get the 256GB model at a minimum. If you're planning on only using it for assignments and keeping things in the cloud, then you can probably get away with the 64GB version. Just remember that you can't change your mind in the future. There's no way to upgrade it. Even though the new iPads have USB-C, they don't recognize USB-C hard drives. I also recommend getting the Wi-Fi version of the iPad. It's going to save you $150 right off the bat, and if you're ever in an area that doesn't have Wi-Fi and you need to get on the internet, just use your phone as a hotspot. Now you have to think about whether or not to get AppleCare. Personally, I think you have to get it, because if you drop it or break the screen within the first 2 years, it'll cost you just $50 to fix your screen or $30 to fix your Apple Pencil if you accidentally screw them up. With AppleCare, you're allowed to do this twice accidentally during the first 2 years. I'm buying it just in case I drop it and the screen breaks, or maybe I drop a camera on it and the screen breaks, because without AppleCare, to fix the screen, it's going to cost me $500. If you have the 12.9-inch, it's $650 to replace the screen. You might as well just buy a new iPad for those prices. So did I convince you against buying the new iPad Pro, or do you plan on getting it anyway? Leave a comment below and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and comment down below on what you'd like to see. My channel has been pretty heavily focused on programming, but I plan on branching out more in the near future.